Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Auburn Energy Committee meeting on Monday, December 28th. It is now called to order at approximately 5:30 p.m. This meeting is being recorded and broadcasted by Local Access Programming. Is there anyone here in the audience that is recording tonight's meeting? Okay, there being none, let's go to our first agenda item. So our first agenda item tonight was a status on the municipal aggregation effort. I know Brian Murphy was supposed to attend, however, he's not here yet. So before we go to our second item, I would actually like to introduce Cheryl Sasser to our committee. We have a new committee member, and we are incredibly excited to have her here participating on the Energy Committee. So this is her first session, and we're glad to have her. With that, we'll just move to the second one, and then if Brian's here before we're kind of ready to go, we'll circle back on the agenda items. Sure. The second agenda item we had was an update on the solar opportunity at the former landfill. So Jeff, do you mind giving us an update from the last meeting?
Since the last meeting, I believe we've met with the town manager, Julie Jacobson, and discussed one company, which I believe we discussed at the last meeting, PM ESCO Power Management. We are in the process of trying to get references. We contacted the executive secretary from the town of Westport, Mr. Tim King, which was a former executive secretary in the town of Auburn many moons ago. And he was very limited on the amount of information he gave us. So we're in the process of reaching out to the Brookfields to try to get a little more of a reference. The only thing that Mr. King did say was to try to have Power Management formulate a letter, a description of the services that they're going to provide with timelines and that type of thing, because the way they're set up, there's no out-of-pocket expense for the town. They bill whoever the leaser will be, but there's really no contract with the town of Auburn. But still, we felt as though we needed a little something from them anyway, just detailing. So they're in the process of generating that letter, as well as looking into the other references from the Brookfields. And there'll be more to come, I'm sure.
So when you had an opportunity to meet with them and with the town manager, was there any discussion about, because if I recall correctly, when we met at the last meeting, they kind of manage the relationship and they go out to bid for us with different leasing companies. Was there any discussion about who, for lack of a better term, like who's the other game in town compared to them, or?
Nothing as of yet. We have a couple companies that we could look into, but we haven't done so yet because so far we're comfortable with this company. Unless we get bad references, I don't think we're going to go outside. Okay. Whereas there's no charge, to the town, where the other companies would be charging us directly, and then we'd have to recoup the cost. So
okay,
we haven't looked further yet.
So the next steps are waiting for the references.
The references and the letter of, more of a detailed letter of intent for services they're going to provide us. And I believe if the town manager feels comfortable with that information, then we'll move forward.
Great. And from our discussion in November, it was a little premature, but was there any discussion about just timeline, just curiosity? Once it gets approved, did they have a estimate as to how long it would take them to get up and running?
They would be fast tracking.
Okay.
Because they were saying that the state is changing the solar, the rules of the game, I guess. So it's something that they want to get in place very quickly. So no exact time frames, but they'd be moving quickly.
Great. So if you're comfortable, we can keep this as a kind of standing agenda item. We can hit at our January meeting.
Sure.
So great. That's very exciting. To see what happens with that. All right, why don't we skip back ahead since Brian thankfully came out for our session. Brian Murphy from Colonial Powers here, just to give us an update on the municipal aggregation effort. So Brian, yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you all again. Hope you had a nice holiday, and hopefully a great new year for everyone as well coming up. So a couple of updates. The meter reads in Auburn are done for the month, so the enrollments have taken place. So most customers who are participating in the program will see a notification on their National Grid bill on page 1, just below the account summary area, that says, we've noticed you've switched your supplier. And that's an indication that the electrons that they're paying for from that point going forward are under the town's rate. And that's an important distinction that we tried to make clear in the letter, but nonetheless, we did receive some calls from customers who expected that rate to appear on this bill this month. And, because the term meter read and billing date, those things can get confusing sometimes. And so it's an important point of clarification for people that it began with the meter read this month and will really show up economically for you the first time when you get your bill in late January. So the power you're consuming now, if you're participating in the program, is at the town's new rate. So the bill you got just today or yesterday is the final bill on the basic service rate. And to further explain that, I've booked some time at the senior center late next month because I knew that would be the time when the first bills would arrive with the new supplier listed, new rates, and there might be some more customer confusion. And let me see if I can give you the date for that. That's 10 a.m. on January 28th at the Senior Center. I take an hour and a half or so, bring some coffee, and talk to anybody that might have questions. I encourage customers to bring their bill if they want to go over it line by line with me, but I'll give them the same general overview that I've given the board and this committee in the past. They'll get the sense of what's going on. We also, when we knew that the meter read was happening and we knew that this notification would appear on customers' bills, we asked the town to put it on their Facebook page, which they did. Now to some brief statistics. So in November, a total of 5,535 pieces of mail went to basic service customers in Auburn. 54 of those came back as undeliverable as addressed. That's, just about 1% or so. And that's unfortunate, but that's the utility. We use utility data, so I don't know how National Grid found them, and we didn't, but we used the exact same names and addresses that National Grid provided to us. Anything could have happened in the month since they gave us the data and the mail arrived at that particular location. Something could have changed. People might have moved out. You never know. 253 customers opted out of the program. So of the total eligible universe, that's about 4.5%. It's a little higher than we had expected, given the amount of notification that the town had done around the program. But it's certainly under the we've seen some towns go 8%. 5 is a little high, but 4.5, it's fine. It's nothing to be alarmed by. Furthermore, we got 22 customers opted into the program. And by the way, this data is as of just prior to the meter read, so it's not, things might have happened last week that aren't accounted for in here. But 22 customers called and said, I have a different supplier. I'd like to drop that supplier and join the town's program. And 148 total transactions were rejected by the utility. So Constellation sent the enrollment data to the utility, and for some reason, National Grid rejected 148 of them as being unenrollable. This can occur for two reasons. One, if a customer has selected National Grid's Green Up product, sometimes their names and address are still given to us, even though they shouldn't have been. So these are customers that should not have been even invited to participate in the program. And number two, some customers have instructed National Grid not to give their data out to anybody. And even so, sometimes National Grid didn't, subtract those people from the set of customers that they gave us to mail to. So the enrollment can sometimes fail because these customers have said, I don't want to enroll with anybody at any time. So a total, as of, again, I'd say the week before the holiday, there were a total of 5,102 customers enrolled. I expect that number to go up a little bit over the last week. And, just today, I took a couple of calls from Auburn residents who were, sad that they missed the meter read, because I said, well, yeah, you can get in, but it's, your meter's not going to be read now again until January. Because they got the bill today and were like, oh, 13 cents, I heard about the town program, I was a little skeptical.
I wanted to save on the Christmas lights.
Yeah. And not only have rates increased, this is the time of year when lighting needs increase, even though the weather's been warm, and people haven't had to use electricity to heat their homes. This is a time when traditionally bills start to climb, either regardless of weather, due to lack of daylight and the extra need for lighting around the holidays. So that's the status as of now. Again, we had the Facebook posting out there. We do have the meeting coming up next month once bills hit home again, and we are actively taking calls. I don't have firm call data for you on like how the total number of calls, but I would estimate it was around 100, 150 calls. From people with all kinds of questions. How do I get in? What is this? How do I opt out? Things like that.
Now, I don't recall on the opt-out letter, was there a spot for them to say why they wanted to opt out, or is it just
There
like a
isn't.
comment section or?
No, there's no
anything like
comment
that?
section. That's a good question. It's, I'll bring that up with the group and see if that's something they want to entertain going forward.
But the ones that were sent out, they had not, so we don't know why
We don't
they
know
may
why.
have wanted to opt out.
I like to say, anecdotally, in the phone calls I've taken in my years doing this, I can generally say there's 3 types of opt-out reasons. And one is, I sent the card because I thought I was joining. So it was really just a mistake on the customer's part, because that opt-out is kind of difficult to grasp sometimes. And so they see a card and they see the rate and they're like, yeah, I want in on that, and they sign it and throw it in the mail. Well, they're actually getting out of the program. So the second is, people say, I've been a customer of Mass Electric my entire life. I don't like change. And that's fine too. And then the other, are, people who say, this is a government program, I don't want any part of that. And that's okay too. So, the reasons for opting out, we don't pry. In one case, I actually asked. I said, can I ask why? And said, no. And I work for the town, which means I work for the customer, and I'm not going to press them, to give me an answer that they don't feel they want to talk about. They want to move on with their day, and they just wanted to opt out. So, but so far so good. Everything's going smoothly with Constellation. A lot of customers did have to call Constellation in order to actively opt in. And I don't know, of the 22 customers that opted in, I got one piece of bad feedback on their experience with the customer service rep at Constellation. As a ratio, that's not bad. Obviously, I'd like that to be 0 customers. And I do have the name of the customer service rep, and I will be speaking with his supervisor. It wasn't like the person was unconscionably rude, but just wasn't as helpful as we would like them to be when someone from Auburn calls with questions. There's a presumption sometimes in that industry that if you're calling, about deregulation and you're making a choice and you're really educated about it. But in the case of an opt-out town program, a lot of people are calling because they've been asked to call. We've given them a toll-free number, so they're calling more with questions than with a specific set of directives that they want Constellation to take care of, which a customer service rep would be happy to do, step 1, step 2, step 3. But if they call with general questions about the town program and how it started, sometimes those customer service reps aren't up to speed on the ability to talk about the history of the program. We're happy when they call our office because they do get a good picture of the overall process. But as far as, one thumbs down out of 22 calls isn't too bad. And again, as I said, I'll be speaking with that person's supervisor tomorrow. Okay.
Brian, can you speak to, so when I called, I'm in the budget plan.
Yeah.
And I think this was something we talked about before, but perhaps we want to provide a little clarification for the people in the town, because individuals can stay in the budget plan, but I think it's only for one portion of the bill. Or at least that's how it was explained to be by National Grid.
Yeah, sometimes the utility will reset your budget payment based on their supply, their delivery charges only. So you pay all of the supply plus a budget on the delivery. And that figure is reset every year. It's kind of like a rolling 12-month average, and they sort of look at your billing history, how much you've used, what they expect you to be paying going forward, and they adjust your budget that way. And a lot of customers got a budget increase this year, because National Grid, when they were doing their budgets back in the fall, were expecting, all right, it's 13 cents, we got to prepare these customers for basically an increase in their budget payment. And so a lot of customers called and said, my budget payment is going up. Does this have anything to do with the program? Not necessarily. A lot of it has to do with National Grid's, calculations early on. But people who are on a budget, given the rates are going to fall next month, will probably wind up being, they might slightly overpay, if they're on a flat rate. But, I've seen it go both ways. I can't get much consistency out of Grid on this issue about whether or not the budget is, a fixed rate that they cover both sides of the bill, or they pass through all of the supply costs and then fix just their costs. So you're hearing that, the latter, and at times I've heard the former from them saying, no, it's $100 a month, $100 a month, and we pay the supplier, in advance, while the customer's in arrears. So I'd be curious to see what happens, to you in particular as the months unfold. So, next month, you'll be getting another bill. I'd love to see how that looks. If you could indulge me by bringing the bill, because I'd like to see how they do that.
Because that was a surprise, and the rep that I spoke with made it very clear that they will continue to budget their delivery piece. But once you go to an outside aggregator, that no longer gets budgeted, and whatever your meter reading is for that month will be charged based upon that price. But still the delivery piece will be that. So I'll bring them in, because I think that'll be important for people, because there is a portion that is still under the budget plan.
That's right.
But so that people who in the town count on having that set dollar amount, I think it'll be important for them to know. There'll still be at a savings with going with Colonial Power, but it'll be a little different. There might be fluctuations that they didn't anticipate.
Yeah.
So
that's good. I would like to see that. And another thing relative to the budget, a couple of customers called and said, well, I'm currently, I'm on a budget plan, but I'm a little behind to National Grid. Does that mean I can't participate? Will Constellation say, well, we don't want somebody who owes money? And that's not the case at all. One of the nice things about these programs is it does not matter, where your station is economically. Everyone gets to participate. It doesn't matter if you owe National Grid money. They make sure, and the suppliers make sure that everybody can participate. And National Grid has a program to make sure that the suppliers are made whole for any of their losses, so they don't feel compelled to try to redline customers based on their bill payment history. So for customers who are on a budget plan, there's times they're overpaying and times they're underpaying. And those times that they're underpaying does not preclude them from participating in this type of thing.
any questions from anyone on the committee? Anybody here from the town have any questions? Or?
All right, we'll do this again next month?
Yes, definitely.
All right.
Thank you
and if
very
anybody's
much for coming
free
out.
at 10 on the Thursday, the 28th, swing on by the Senior Center.
Great. Thank you so much for coming out, Brian.
My pleasure.
And,
Thank you.
We'll be chatting soon.
Absolutely.
All right. So from there, our next agenda item is just public comment or any informal discussion. So is there any public comment from those in the audience tonight? All right, we have no formal correspondence that we've received. The next agenda item, we have two sets of minutes, one from the meeting on the 23rd of November, and then the second from the 26th of October, which have been distributed previously, but I did bring copies for folks. So has everybody had an opportunity to see them? Are there any changes required? Did anybody see anything that needed to be updated?
No. The only thing I would ask if we could do, though, is to put the date maybe somewhere at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, it is up. This is formal letterhead that Eric gave me, so, but I can
Okay,
look to.
Never mind, then that's fine. I didn't even see that, never mind. Disregard.
Okay.
Thank you. Other than that, yeah, that's fine with me.
So if we review, do we want to entertain a motion to approve the minutes?
Do we want it separate, or can we do them together?
Since there are no amendments, I don't see why we couldn't do them together.
Okay, I will move to approve the minutes of the October 26th and the November 23rd minutes.
Anybody second the motion? All right.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, minutes from the November 23rd and October 26th have been approved by the committee. Just looking at that. So our next regular meeting will be Monday, January 25th at 5:30 here at the Auburn School Department at 5 West Street, right in the school committee meeting room. Barring that, are there any other items for discussion for tonight? Would anybody like to entertain a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Then like a second?
Second.
Second, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, with that, we will close the meeting at 5:52. Thank you, have a good night.